Above the Lineth first time I met Erik Larsson. I was coordinating a rescue for a climber trapped at 13,400 feet on the diamond, and he was refusing to come down from the face because there was a second injured climber I didn't know about and the weather window was closing. My name is Diego Reyes. I'm the mountain rescue coordinator for Boulder County Search and Rescue. Third-generation Filipino-American from a family of nurses and teachers who somehow produced one person obsessed with vertical rescue operations in Colorado. I've been doing this job for 7 years. I've coordinated maybe 100 rescues. I know the statistics on weather, on terrain, on human error at altitude. I know that the mountains don't care about your intentions. Thursday started like any other September day in peak climbing season. I was at SAR headquarters reviewing incident protocols when the call came through. A solo climber on the diamond had taken a fall. Impact injuries, potential fracture, definitely unable to descend on his own. The Boulder Mountain Rescue Team mobilized within 8 minutes. I coordinated from dispatch, tracking helicopter availability, weather patterns, rescue team positioning. Ground team ETA at the base is 45 minutes, I told the pilot. Weather window starts closing in 2 hours. We need to get someone up there for assessment and stabilization before we attempt evac. Copy that. The pilot replied. Sending the best climber we have. That climber was Erik Larsson. I knew Erik by reputationally rock climbing guide, Boulder resident, certified mountain rescue climber with more technical ascents than most people have vacation days. I'd worked with him before on rescues. He was fast, competent, and took unnecessary risks, which was the combination that made him invaluable, and also deeply irritating from a coordination perspective. He was en route within 20 minutes. I watched the timer tick down while Erik moved up the diamond. The climber name was Michael, mid-50s. Experienced enough to know better, but not experienced enough to avoid making a rookie mistake. Was conscious and coherent, which was good. His left leg was definitely broken, possibly compound fracture, and he was in pain management mode. Erik reached him in 53 minutes. I've got eyes on him, Erik radioed down. Compound fracture, left femur. He's stable, but immobile. I'm setting up a secure anchor for evac preparation. Good, I said. Weather's shifting. You've got 90 minutes before conditions deteriorate. Copy. I watched the storm system move in on the meteorological readout. A cold front was pushing down from Canada, bringing wind and potential precipitation. Not quite a full weather disaster, but enough that helicopter evacuation would become impossible if it hit before we got Michael off the mountain. 70-5 minutes in. Erik radioed again. Diego, I've got a problem. My stomach dropped. In mountain rescue, I've got a problem means something went catastrophically wrong. Talk to me, I said, already flagging the helicopter pilot for standby abort. There's a second climber. Woman, solo ascent, different route. I didn't see her until I was setting up the anchor. She's about 30 meters up face from Michael's position. She's conscious, but she's panicking, and she's in a bad spot if she moves wrong. She's going to slide into Michael, and we're going to have to critical injuries. In an exposed position, my mind immediately recalculated the entire operation. 2 injured climbers, 1 exposed location. 1 weather window that was getting narrower by the minute. Is she injured? I asked. Can't assess from here without moving both of them. She's trapped because of her position on the face. She climbed into a spot that works fine for ascending, but if she tries to move in any direction, the geometry forces her toward a drop. This was a nightmare scenario. 2 people to different injury profiles. A weather window measured in minutes, and a position so precarious that any intervention could make things worse. I'm sending additional climbers, I said, making the call even as I was speaking. You're going to need backup. Already figured that, Erik replied. But Diego, we've got 45 minutes before the wind makes helicopter evacuation impossible. You need to get someone up here who can stabilize the second climber while I manage Michael's evac. And that person needs to be me, or they need to be better than me. Because anything less, and we're going to lose people. He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was right. I'm scrambling the secondary rescue team. They'll be 10 minutes behind you. I need you to stabilize Michael for immediate evacuation and coordinate with whoever gets to the second climber. On it, Erik said. I watched the clock. I watched the storm system. I watched the radar data scroll across my screen while coordinating 3 different agencies, to helicopter teams, and a growing sense that this was about to go very wrong. Then my phone rang. It was Magda Chen, our lead technical climber on the secondary team, Diego. Erik just sent me coordinates for the second climber's position. I'm analyzing the approach, and he's right if anyone tries the standard routes. They're going to trigger a cascade. The only clean approach is from above. Can you do it? I asked. I can do it. But I need Erik to anchor from above while I descend. He's the only one who has the positioning to hold both climbers. I closed my eyes. I was about to ask Erik to do something that would require splitting his attention between the critical patients in a deteriorating weather situation. It was exactly the kind of decision that gets people killed. Erik, you copy? I radioed. I copy, he said immediately. I'm already setting up the above anchor. Tell Magda I've got her. 42 minutes into the operation, Magda started her descent from above while Erik held anchor for both directions. I was coordinating from dispatch like I was orchestrating a symphony, where every wrong note could be fatal. Double quotes Magda, your approach is looking clean, I said. Erik, are you stable? I'm good, Erik replied. She's 40 meters out. Michael, I know you're in pain, but I need you to stay absolutely still. The woman above us is coming down to help. Can you do that? I can do that, Michael said, his voice tight with pain. 30-8 minutes. Magda reached the second climber. Name was Sarah. Late 40s, solo climber. Fell while reaching for a handhold and immediately started a technical assessment while Erik held the anchors from above. With wind picking up, she's got a potential shoulder dislocation and lacerations, but nothing that looks immediately life-threatening. Magda radioed. I'm preparing her for assisted descent. Weather's dropping, I said. You've got 30 minutes before conditions become unsafe. What happened next was the most elegant mountain rescue I'd ever coordinated. Magda guided Sarah down using rope assistance while Erik held anchor from above. Sarah descended carefully, painfully, but moving. Magda reached Michael and began stabilization. The helicopter window was closing. I could see it on the radar. The storm system accelerating, and we were running out of time. Helicopter incoming. The pilot radioed. I'm making one pass. If we don't get evac in the next 14 minutes, I'm pulling out. Copy, I said. All personnel, helicopter window is 14 minutes. Prepare for immediate extraction. Magda got Sarah to the helicopter extraction point first. She was mobile with assistance, and getting her out of the exposed position was priority one. I watched through binoculars from dispatch as they lifted her into the helicopter. 12 minutes left. Michael was being prepared for extraction. Now stretcher. Medical prep, all the stabilization Magda and Erik could manage in the deteriorating conditions. The wind was picking up. Erik was still anchored above them, holding the position steady. 10 minutes. Michael went into the helicopter. Magda was being extracted. Erik, get down, I radioed. Now, time to descend. On it, he said. I'm coming down. But Erik wasn't doing a standard descent. He was speed climbing down from the anchors he'd set, moving with controlled urgency. And I could see the wind picking up in the storm system, and I knew I absolutely knew that he was going to make it by maybe 30 seconds. 8 minutes, the wind was visible now. Even from my position, trees were bending. The clouds were rolling in fast. 6 minutes. Erik? I radioed. Status. 50 meters out, he replied. Moving fast. Helicopter says they need to see you in 90 seconds or they're pulling out. For minutes, I watched the radar. I watched Erik's descent. I watched the weather system rolling like a wall, and I held my breath because this was the moment where people died not from the fall, not from the injury, but from the moment when everything came together wrong and you ran out of options. To minutes. I saw Erik emerge from the clouds. He was moving at a sprint downslope, and the helicopter was already starting its rotors. And I could see even from dispatch with binoculars the moment when he reached the extraction point and threw himself into the helicopter as the storm hit. The helicopter pulled up and banked west. 14 seconds later, I lost visual contact as the weather system completely rolled over the mountain. 90 seconds later, all 3 evacuees were in Boulder Community Hospital. 45 minutes after that, I was coordinating follow-up logistics, filing incident reports, and breathing for the first time since Erik had radioed me that there was a second climber. That's when Erik showed up at my dispatch office. He was still in climbing gear harness, chalk dust, the specific exhaustion that comes from running on adrenaline for straight hours. He looked like he'd been through hell, and he was also looking at me with an intensity that made something in my chest shift. That was insane, I said. That was necessary, he replied. We saved people. We almost didn't. We had 12 seconds of helicopter window left, but we had 12 seconds. He pulled off his climbing gloves. You coordinated that perfectly. I've worked with a lot of rescue teams. I've never seen someone manage dual critical patients in a weather window that tight. You were the one refusing to come down when the second climber was trapped, I said. That could have ended with 3 people needing rescue instead of 2. But it didn't, because you trusted me to know what I was doing, and you coordinated response instead of ordering me down. He was still looking at me with that intensity. I want to get coffee with you. Away from a crisis situation. Just coffee. Just talking. Is that possible? I should have said no. I should have maintained professional distance. But I just watched Erik move with perfect competence under pressure. And I just spent 4 hours coordinating with someone who understood exactly how to operate. When everything was falling apart, yeah, I said, coffee is possible. We went to a coffee place in downtown Boulder. This little spot near the Pearl Street Mall that probably made espresso better than anywhere else in Colorado. Erik ordered black coffee and looked utterly out of place in climbing clothes and chalk dust. I ordered a latte and tried not to stare. Tell me something true, he said. After we'd exhausted the basics, where we grew up, how we got our jobs. Like what? Like why you do mountain rescue when you could do emergency management for literally anything else. Why vertical? Why the pressure? I thought about it. My family came from the Philippines. My parents are nurses. My aunts are teachers. My grandmother was a midwife. They all did work that meant something. Work that saved people. I grew up knowing that was what I was supposed to do. I looked at him. But I grew up in Colorado. And I fell in love with the mountains. So I found a way to merge them. Mountain rescue means I'm using my family's legacy, protecting people, keeping them alive, but I'm doing it where I love most. He nodded like that made perfect sense. I grew up in a small town outside of Stockholm. My parents are both engineers. Very practical, very focused on systems and structures. My dad builds bridges. My mother designs water treatment systems. I was supposed to go into engineering. He paused. But I got obsessed with climbing when I was 12. Started rock climbing at 14. Was competing by 16. My parents accepted it, but they never quite understood why I loved the risk. Why do you? I asked. Because when you're on a rock face, everything simplifies. You can't think about anything except the next hold. You can't worry about the future or the past. You can only be present in the moment, solving the immediate problem. Everything else falls away. He met my eyes. Until today. Today I was on a face, and I was thinking about you. About whether you were worried. About whether I was going to make the evacuation in time. About whether I was letting you down. You weren't, I said. I know. But I was thinking it. Which means, he paused, which means you've become more important than the moment. Which is new for me. We sat in that coffee shop for 3 hours. We talked about family expectations and small towns and why you choose to love dangerous things. We talked about trust and competence and the specific knowledge that comes from watching someone operate perfectly under pressure. When we left, Erik walked me to my car. I want to do this again, he said. This thing where we're not coordinating a rescue. Where we're just, he gestured vaguely, choosing to be around each other. Okay, I said, okay? Yeah. I want that too. He kissed me there in the parking lot. And it tasted like black coffee and mountain air. And the specific relief of making it through a crisis intact. When he pulled back, he was smiling. You know, this is going to be complicated, he said. My job requires me to take risks. Your job requires you to coordinate those risks and worry about whether they pay off. Yeah. I said, I know. And you still want this. Erik, I just watched you speed climb down a mountain in deteriorating weather. I know exactly who you are and what you do. And I still want this. Esther's 3 months later, my family met Erik at Thanksgiving. My mom made Filipino food. My aunts asked him approximately 10,000 questions. And my grandmother decided he had sufficient spine for me. My dad and Erik immediately started talking about bridge engineering and rock climbing physics. And I watched my father realize that his son was with someone who understood both precision and risk in the exact same way he did. Erik brought me to Boulder's climbing community. I met his climbing partners, his guide colleagues, the people who shared his specific obsession with vertical space. I learned to belay. I learned to read rock. I learned the language of climbing, which is just another way of saying I learned how to speak Erik's fluent language of trust and presence and commitment. We moved in together in February. A small cabin on the edge of Boulder. Close enough to downtown, but far enough that we could see the mountains from our bedroom. Erik maintained his climbing guide business. I maintained my rescue coordination. And somehow, in between those things, we built a life where trust became the foundation, not just in crisis, but in the everyday. He'd leave in the morning for a climbing expedition, and I wouldn't catastrophize about whether he'd come back. He'd radio from dispatch that a rescue was getting complicated, and he wouldn't panic about whether I could handle it. We learned in that first crisis that we both operated best under pressure, and that meant we could let each other do our jobs without needing constant reassurance. 1 year into the relationship, on a clear September day exactly a year after the diamond rescue, Erik took me climbing. Not a serious climb, just a beginner-friendly route of the Flatirons that I'd been working on. We reached the summit as sunset was happening, and the whole valley was turning gold and purple below us. I want to ask you something, Erik said. Okay, I replied, already knowing what was coming because I know how Erik operates. He doesn't do dramatic moments. He does moments that belong to the place. He does things where the environment itself becomes part of the meaning. He pulled out a ring. Simple band, looks like it could be worn during climbing. Probably climber-friendly by design. I love you, he said. I love that you coordinated the most important rescue of my life. I love that you trust me to take risks and that you still worry anyway because you care. I love that you operate best under pressure and that you know I do too. I love building a life with someone who speaks the same language of competence and presence. He extended the ring. Will you marry me? Yes, I said, probably before he'd even finished the question. We kissed there at the summit, with the whole valley spread out below us and the mountains surrounding us like witnesses. And I thought about that first crisis and how sometimes you meet people at exactly the moment when everything is falling apart, and you discover that the person who helps you hold it together is exactly the person you want holding your hand afterward. 9 months later, got married in the Flatirons. Not at the summit, but at a beautiful clearing where we could see multiple peaks. My family came, my parents brought my aunts and my uncles. My grandmother wore traditional Filipino dress. My cousin brought his boyfriend. Erik's family came from Sweden, his parents, his siblings, and about 15 relatives I couldn't quite remember the names of, but who were all very warm and very interested in bridge engineering. The ceremony happened at sunset. Erik wore a suit that probably cost more than I want to know, but he looked perfect. I wore a tailored jacket and slacks because neither of us believed in gendered wedding clothes, and we looked like ourselves, a mountain rescue coordinator and a climbing guide, built for function and honest about the risks we both take. My father gave a speech about legacy and how sometimes your children honor your work in ways you don't expect. Erik's mother gave a speech in Swedish that had everyone crying, and then she translated it, and it was about how love looks like trusting someone on the vertical, which is to say it looks like trusting them to catch you, to hold the rope, to be present when you're most vulnerable. We danced under a string of lights. We ate food that both families contributed to. We cut a cake that had what looked like a tiny climbing figure on top. It was perfect. Late in the evening, Erik's dad pulled me aside. You know he'll always take risks. His dad said in accented English. Yeah, I replied. That's exactly who I love. Good, Erik's dad said. That's exactly who he needs. 3 days after the wedding, Erik and I were both working. I was at dispatch coordinating a rescue operation. He was on a climb with a client. He radioed down from the rock face, and I heard his voice through the crackle of the radio. Calm and professional and completely present in the moment. Looking good from here. He said to his client, just stay with me. I smiled. He was always going to be doing this. Always going to be on vertical space. Always going to be taking calculated risks. Always going to be operating at his best under pressure. And I was always going to be coordinating from dispatch. Always going to be managing the variables. Always going to be the person who held the thread while he moved up. That's love, I thought. In mountain rescue terms, it's someone who moves forward while you hold position. It's trusting the system that holds you both. It's being present exactly when presence matters most. When Erik came off the rock that evening, he found me waiting at the base. Good day, I asked. Perfect day, he said. Client got to the summit. Weather held. Everyone is safe. That's all I need, I replied. He kissed me there with chalk dust on his hands and sunset on his face. And I absolutely knew that we were going to be okay, that this was going to last. That's sometimes when you meet someone in the middle of crisis, and you discover they operate exactly like you do. That's when you know you found something real. The Indepilog CCTV timestamp, September 17th, 2027, 1640 to security footage from Boulder Mountain Rescue Dispatch Center. Diego at the coordination desk, monitoring multiple screens and weather readouts. Erik walks in from field operations, climbing gear still on, and places a coffee on Diego's desk. Their hands touch briefly. In the background, the mountains visible through the dispatch center windows. In the foreground, to people who learn that love looks like coordinating someone else's risk while trusting them completely.